On this lesson, know who's in charge. Basically, this is easy. Who's cutting the check? Who is responsible for paying you at the end of the day or net 30 days, whatever that may be? Okay, well, knowing your boss is pretty darn important, okay? Knowing the person who is in charge. And how do you find that out? So it's a new time event. You've never done this event before, but you need to know this information. Well, how do you do it? Maybe you have a friend that's doing it, or you know someone else is doing the event, or you talk to your director, you talk to your producer, you talk to the people that are in charge who have hired you to do this, and then you got to find out who the boss is, okay? Because there is nothing worse, nothing. Let's say you're out doing an event, okay? You're standing there rehearsing some lines before you go up on stage, and some guy that you don't even know, some random dude, walks up to you and says, hey, can you move these chairs and then move them over there to this area? And you look at yourself and you look at this guy and go, who are you? No, don't ask me to move any chairs. Okay, what if that's the boss? What if that's the dude who's cutting the check at the end of the day? And that was the one guy that you did not need to piss off in any sort of way, and that's how you treated him. His first impression of you is not a very favorable one. So you're in trouble off the get-go. You might as well write off having that job next year because you're not going to get it, especially if you treat him like that. Even if you try to apologize for it later, you're going to look silly, and that's wrong. So find out who that person is. So when you're on site, immediately when you're on site, you can avoid that situation. Knowing who the boss is, who's cutting the check, that stuff is so important. So use your contacts who have hired you to do the job to help you figure out who is in charge, who's the boss, who's cutting the check, so you don't get in trouble and that one doesn't catch you by surprise, because that could get you. Know your sponsorship. Why should you know your sponsorship? Oh my goodness. Well, wouldn't you like to correctly name the sponsors and how to pronounce their names and what they sell and what they do? Wouldn't you want to be able to do that effectively and make them happy? Because let's face it, the sponsorships are the ones, they're the ones that are spending the money. The sponsors are putting the money into this event to make this event possible. 9 out of 10 times, you're not even going to be able to hold this event without a major sponsor. So if you're not going to do your job as an announcer not to know the sponsorship, come on. I have a whole nother lesson on this one that you need to check out about sponsorships and the breakdown of that. But knowing who your sponsor is, knowing what they sell, knowing what they have, what they call an activation on site, that stuff is all super important to being able to communicate your job effectively and make everyone happy. Because look, without the sponsors, there's no job. No one's breaking down doors to pay. In fact, it's harder and harder to get sponsors these days to shell out the money to put something together. And whether it be a large band festival, whether it be a competition or whatever, you're not seeing as much anymore. So that's why we need to do whatever we can, because these are the companies that are spending the money so you can do events and travel the world, like myself as a professional announcer. So knowing your sponsorship, huge. Knowing what they sell, you can refer to that just when talking about them. Just when you're announcing to the crowd, you can mention what those sponsors sell and where they can get that stuff. That's why it's important. All right, know your sponsorship. Know your VIP guest. Know your VIP guest. Well, that's pretty important too. From time to time, you have events and there could be famous people. Now, when I worked in the NBA and I was an on-court announcer for the Los Angeles Clippers, tell you what, I met fans all the time, met like actors, Hollywood actors and actresses on a daily basis, and former, NBA champions would come into the arena, and I was always able to refer to them while I was announcing because I saw them, and it made them feel good. You're not calling them out, putting them on the microphone, but you're mentioning, oh, I saw, Billy Crystal used to go to Clippers games all the time. Well, here's a guy, oh, Billy Crystal I saw down there, and he's having a good time at the game. You can refer to that because you know who's there, who's at the arena. So knowing your VIP guests, super important. You can refer to them in the show, and that actually gives clout to the show that you're doing. If you got famous people coming out to your show and they're in your audience, hey, that's good to let people know that, because that's good clout. It just shows that you guys, bring in the best of the best to come out there and watch the show. So definitely know your VIP guest. All right. Story time. Let's talk about this one. All right. Early in my career, I started getting a lot more events, a lot big like fairs and competitions that would have skateboarding and BMX and freestyle motocross, and these competitions were basically popping up all over the place. And I had just made the change over from DJing into more of full-time announcing And so that's what I was doing. So I was hired by a company that had never hired me before. I had never worked for them ever before, okay? And I show up after announcing the competition all day long, pretty much doing a great job as I was expected. That's what I deliver when you hire me to do an event. So doing the competition all day long, everything's going good. And then now it's time for me to go to the award stage and do some of the awards on stage. So that was the thing. So here it is, the end of the day, the final day. I'd worked for 3 or 4 days straight, and it's always the last thing you do that people remember you by. But this was a big mistake on my part, which I learned so quick never to make that mistake again, all right? Got to the stage. I didn't know who my boss was. I didn't know the main person in charge. I just agreed to do the job and came out there and, performed a duty and announced the competition and then got to do the awards. So this guy comes up to me on stage, random dude, comes up to me right when I'm doing the awards and says, hey, I need you to say this, blah, 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 blah. Say this, blah, blah, blah. Say this, this, and this. And told me like 5 things to say. There's no way, first off, I'm going to remember 5 things in a row. Bam, bam, bam. My memory's not that good to be able to pull that off. But if I write it down, then it's always easier for me to be able to look at a note, a side, a cue card, whatever it may be. And that's what you use. All right, we'll see. This guy was the main boss. And once I said that, I looked at him and I go, whoa, please. That's a lot to say. You're going to need to write that down. Now, that's not the way I should have talked to a boss. That was the problem right there. You don't talk to a boss that way, because that was the main deal that I broke his trust in me by talking to him like down to him. What I should have said, oh, okay, that's a lot. I just really want to say the correct thing. So let me write this down so we have it all perfect and I say it just the way you want it to be said. So that's what I should have did. Said I kind of overreacted and said, no, you're going to need to write it down. And he got mad. And then he went on to have this same event for, I think, 3 or 4 more years. They had this major event. They don't do it anymore. But he never hired me again for that. Now, years later, I ended up working for the guy doing something else. But before that, basically because of that day right there, lost the opportunity to do about probably 3 or 4 more years of doing that very job and traveling around the world to different locations. But because I did that to him on the award stage, he didn't like it, and hence it cost me some work out of it. So you don't make that mistake. That's why know who's in charge, know your boss, know who's in charge. That's it.